Y muchas gracias, Sandra, por recordarnos que hay que grabar la reunión. Van a recibir un mensaje ahorita que estoy iniciando la grabación ahora mismo.
Excellent. Now, Francisco, is it time for me to move you over to the other channel?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. I will do that right now, and then we'll get ourselves going. Please hold while I take care of that. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, we should all be straight. And Yadira just logged on. I hope that she heard the message, but Yadira, we have translation. We're asking everybody to click the globe at the bottom of the screen and select the language. Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. I'll turn my camera on. I've been doing little things behind the scenes, but wanted to welcome you all to this meeting. We have a huge group, and it's so exciting to have everybody here. I have noted everybody that is here, and we'll make sure that I add all these folks to our list for future meetings. And I will, I'll make sure that I send all the information out to everybody. We are recording this meeting. So just to give a quick recap, at the last meeting, we came up with a bit of an agenda for this meeting. Up until that point, we had some kind of free-form conversation. And so we came up with an agenda that tonight we'll have a discussion about the framework agreement, which is the governing document for the National Western Center. It's sort of the partnership agreement, or it is the partnership agreement between Colorado State University, the City and County of Denver, the National Western Stock Show, or we call them sometimes the Western Stock Show Association, and then the National Western Center Authority. So we're going to have Jen do that presentation for us, and then hopefully have a productive discussion. I have 2 pages of folks, and so I'll have to watch for hands. We'll ask you to raise your hand, and then I'll recognize folks for questions going through. At this point, I'd like to throw it out. Does anybody have a comment or question about the agenda? After that, we're going to talk about the questions that the GES Coalition posed to the city and to the National Western Center Authority. And I just have to interrupt. I love seeing all the kids on the screen. Liliana, you're a little person. I love seeing everybody, and then Nola. So we'll also talk about the GES Coalition questions. We'll talk a little more about citizen representation on the board, and then hopefully kind of schedule out what we want next and what we want agendas to be. So does anybody have any questions or comments about that at this point? And I will look for hands. There are a lot of people, so excellent. All right, so seeing no comments or questions regarding the agenda, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Jen, because we want to have plenty of time for discussion. So Jen Wellborn's joining us. We're going to have Jenna Garcia from our office put a presentation up on the screen. So Jen, who works for the City and County of Denver, we welcome you, and I'll let you start. And Jenna, if you want to start sharing your screen, that would be great. Is it allowing you to do it?
I believe so. Okay.
Thank you, Jenna. Better you than me. Thank you so much. So I've been asked.
Oh, Jen, it looks like you're frozen. Uh-oh. Oh, Jen, you might turn off your video, because I think you're freezing up. Technical difficulties. I'm just going to text her real fast.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I don't know what happened. I just lost connection completely. Sorry about that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Jenna, go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the framework agreement, contributions of each of the parties to the framework agreement, how the framework agreement approaches construction of phases 1 and 2, and then what it says about future phases. Jenna. Okay, so the parties, Liz said this, the parties are the City and County of Denver, Colorado State University, the Stock Show, and the National Western Center Authority. It replaces a 1990 agreement between the Stock Show and the city, which governed the city's investment in the Stock Show campus in the late 80s, early 90s. The initial term of the new framework agreement is 50 years, and then it has 2 25-year renewal periods. It guarantees that the National Western Stock Show will be at the National Western Center campus for the next 100 years. It's a commitment from the Stock Show to stay at this campus. And then it addresses, very generally, it addresses the formation of the authority, contributions of the equity partners, property ownership and use, campus development, operations and maintenance, programming, sponsorship and naming rights, campus revenue, and then lots of little things like insurance that concern the parties in the campus. Jenna, yeah, thanks. Okay, so party contributions, the framework agreement secured funding for the design and construction of phases 1 and 2. It called for $622 million from Denver, and that funding was from the revenue from the 2C bonds, $50 million in cash and $75 million in land from the Stock Show. And then CSU paid the city for its land, for its 3 facilities and the actual cost of site preparation. And that was estimated at the time to be $27.7 million. That money has already been paid to the city. And then we'll do, when we're finished with the project, we'll do a true up and make sure that all the expenses of CSU were paid. And if there's any excess, that it's returned to CSU. In addition, it calls for funding from the RTA. The RTA is a state program that the city received in a competitive process. That funding acts sort of like an increment. It's a sales tax increment. And the receipt of that is over, I don't know why it says it's over 6 years, sorry. It's over 30 years. CSU is also spending, their $27.7 million is, oh. Thank you, Yadira. I'll slow down. CSU is also spending $200 million for land site preparation and for construction of their buildings. So the 27.7 is a part of the 200. And then the city has continued to look for grants and other funding. Okay, Jenna. Yes, AE, RTA stands for Regional Tourism Act. That's state funding that comes through the state Department of, I forget what it is. Oh, edit.
Hey, Jen.
Yep.
This is Brad. Also, we'll be able to post this deck on the community portal page that we created last month. And we're making some improvements to that now.
Okay.
We'll be able to post this deck to that. So you'll be able to revisit this anytime also, because I know we're going to cover a lot of information here tonight in a pretty short period of time.
Thanks, Brad. I thought it would be helpful to talk about roles and responsibilities. Denver, the city of Denver is to provide funding. It is doing the planning, design, and construction of the phase 1 and 2 projects, which includes managing the scope, schedule, and budget. The city owns the land and will own the public facilities. that are constructed. And of course, the city has an ongoing obligation to interface and collaborate with the community on that. The National Western, on the right side of your screen, the National Western Center Authority is the nonprofit that was set up by the WSSA and the city and CSU to operate and maintain the new facilities at the National Western Center campus. So that includes operating and maintaining the facilities, doing the scheduling and programming, collaborating with the community, finding ways to drive revenue so that the center pays for itself and doesn't rely on public funding. The authority continues to work on the community investment fund with the community to find ways to both raise money and then transfer those monies to the community for investment in the community. And then, I'm sorry, I can't see the bottom of the screen because of the stuff that's on the app. Hold on, let me cancel out of it. There we go. Okay. Campus-wide services is an obligation to find, procure services on the campus. And there's a long list of those that I'm sure Liz and Brad would be happy to talk about in more detail, either now or at another time. And then also to seek partnerships and sponsorships on the campus. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk about CSU and WSSA. So the National Western Stock Show, which is also the Western Stock Show Association, provided the land that they owned on the campus to the city and provided $50 million in funding. It's constructing and operating its own legacy building on the campus. It will buy that land from the city. It will manage existing facilities until the handover of the entire campus to the authority. So the existing facilities are still managed by the stock show. And it will continue to produce events pursuant to the framework agreement and the stock show lease with the authority. Right now, the obligations consist of the stock show, the county fair, and the pro rodeo weekend. And then CSU's obligations are to fund and construct and operate their 3 facilities and to produce events in their facilities and campus-wide to support the use of the campus and their mission. Okay. Thanks. So campus development is guided by the framework agreement. The scope, schedule, and budget is guided by a steering committee, which is called SteerCom in the framework agreement. SteerCom has representatives of each of the parties on it. The city has completed the majority of the horizontal infrastructure that includes site prep, drainage, a bridge at 51st Avenue, roadways, removal of the Metro wastewater Delgany interceptor, and demolition and relocation of the rail lines on the west side of the campus. Those, as you know, have been relocated to the center of the campus along the consolidated rail line now. The city's also already built the stockyards and the stockyards event center and is currently designing the livestock center, which will break ground this year. Thanks, Jenna. Future phases. Oh, thanks, Liz. Future phases are in the framework agreement refer to phases 3 through 8 of the master plan. The framework agreement acknowledges that those future phases are not funded, and the city has the obligation and is undertaking the requirements that the framework agreement set out to try to find a way to fund and construct those future phases. If the city hasn't done so by 2027, and any other party to the framework agreement can submit a plan to finance and construct the arena and the expo hall. And if that plan is feasible, the city has to make land available and revenue available from those facilities to the party that has a viable plan to fund and construct those facilities. Oh, shoot. And then here are links that you'll be able to use when you look at the posted deck. Liz, is there anything we need to do to fix? It looks like there's a problem with the translation.
Oh, okay. I missed that in the chat. Sorry about that.
It looks like it's back. It might have.
Okay, thank you, Liliana. No, I didn't want to.
All right. Sorry, I
didn't want to
trying
keep talking if folks didn't know.
Excellent. Well,
That's
no,
not
and I've been trying to track the get some links for folks. So driving all the different parts has been a little challenging here, but so hopefully we can confirm that translation is working again.
So I know that's a really high level overview of the framework agreement, but I thought it would help to kick off questions and maybe provide a framework for talking about the framework. But I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to make something that I was unclear about more clear. However you want to do it, Liz, or if anybody wants to ask questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Yeah, I'll also give Brad Buchanan a chance to chime in if you had any things you wanted to add, Brad, or also Brad Dodson, who is from the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, otherwise known as NUCO, which is the construction arm. So Buchanan, do you have any comments or things you'd like to add before we get to everybody's questions?
So I'll just add that, the framework agreement is a lengthy document, but the goal with this slide deck was to hit the deal points. There's a lot of verbiage in the document about what happens if people don't do what they're supposed to do and remedies around all those kinds of things, and more specific to when CSU buys the land from the city, there's an equation that calculates that. There's all those kinds of pieces of information. So we're trying to hit these major kind of deal points, and happy to dig into any of these pieces and parts. Happy the framework agreement itself is obviously available to people. It's I think if you're not an attorney, it's a hard document to read and understand. I know for me, I spent a lot of time looking at different pieces and parts, and I usually need an attorney to interpret what it means in some places. So it's helpful to have this distilled down to some of the key deal points. So at the end of the day, though, what Jen just went through are all the moving parts of what the commitments were in this, and what the remedy could be if a process like we're going through doesn't provide a solution that moves ahead.
And I also wanted to point out that I didn't go back and address specifically the questions that were submitted by the GES Coalition, because for two reasons. One, we're going to talk about those specifically, and two, because the answers to those questions are posted, and so you can take a look at those on the site on the nationalwesterncenter.com site.
And we'll get the link to those in the chat in just a minute. Okay, I'm looking for hands of people that had any questions relating to that presentation. I have to kind of flip between a couple pages here. I don't see anybody with hands up. So Brad Dodson, did you have any comments or thoughts?
Thank you, Liz. I don't have anything to add. Listen, nobody understands the framework agreement better than Jen, so I will defer to her, but happy to help answer any questions specifically about phase 1 and 2 construction.
Hey, Liz, this is AE. I can't find the hand. I'm an idiot. Can you hear me?
I can, AE, go ahead.
Okay, I put one question in the chat. Regarding access to the SteerCom agendas mentioned on page 7 and minutes. That has always been a bit opaque in the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee conversations about how that is generating impacts and whether or not there's a loop directly in from the neighborhood constituencies for that. And I'd love for that to be opened up and made more transparent. And secondly, in HB 15-1134, was it? I can't remember the exact number. There was a 250
1344.
million, pardon me?
Yeah.
Okay, we got it.
1344, yeah.
Okay, 1344. There was a 250 million allocation to the CSU investment in the National Western Center project. And over several months, I really made an effort to get a clear profile of what the $50 million was, and vaguely understood that it was directed more toward the CSU location. But it would be really helpful to put that piece of the jigsaw puzzle out more publicly in relationship to the mission and intended implementation of what the full campus is. So maybe some documentation could be issued at this point under some form. I don't know if it's too much detail and it may not be available for this conversation, but it would be helpful.
Are you talking about the 50 of the 250, the CSU? I don't understand the.
There's $250 million designated in the House Bill 15 for the National Western Center project and CSU's investment in that project. There's a $200 million figure in the presentation, and it's consistently been presented over the years that CSU is investing $200 million on the campus site. I've made inquiries over numbers of months on the CAC asking, what about the 50 million? It would be helpful and enriching and lovely to know what that accomplishes in the big picture, and never got a real clear or formal response to that. So I would just like to bring that forward now as part of the ongoing briefing for all of us to understand the full picture.
Yep. So AE, there 50 million of the 250 million that CSU is investing is being spent up in Fort Collins, I believe, but I have written that down as a question, and we will get an answer to that for you.
So Liz, I appreciate that. That's the only statement that I've ever received. It's been spent up in Fort Collins. I'm just asking for all of the details, and we need to talk directly to CSU about that and get it out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I've got that on my list. Thanks, AE. Okay, other questions? And just for all of you, the hand raise icon is, if you click, there's a little section called reactions. It's like a little smiley face with a plus on it. And if you click on that, you'll see the raised hand.
Liz, could someone address the SteerCom question I put in chat?
Oh, yes. Yep. And then we'll go to you, Alfonso. Brad Dodson, are those documents publicly posted somewhere? I don't know the answer to that question.
They are not posted publicly, but directly from SteerCom. But I will say this: so the updates that are provided each month in SteerCom are it's a general construction update and then updates from each of the partners. They mirror the same updates that are provided monthly at the National Western Center Authority board meeting, as well as the updates that previously were provided to the Citizens Advisory Committee. So it's the same information that we share in different places. There's a separate responsibility that SteerCom has for contractual execution. Those are all things that we historically have brought throughout, from the to the community and heard from the community, and then that translates into the execution of contracts. And so SteerCom actually then is the body that then approves any changes through that change management process. But otherwise, all the updates are the same things that are given in other forums. I'll also add that SteerCom reviews on a quarterly basis the financial statements for the program, and that shows the progress that's been made against each of the contracts that make up phase 1 and 2. That report that SteerCom reviews is posted on the nationalwestern.center.com website on a quarterly basis, and so you can go and access that. And we're happy to email that out, the most recent financial statement, if anyone would like to see that.
Alfonso?
I thought it'd be a good time to bring up one of the questions that came out of basically from the answers that we received to our initial questions is in the framework agreement itself. It's cited various times or alludes to various times, cited as well, a mission and a vision at various points throughout the document. But can we get a clear understanding of what exactly it is that is the mission and the vision? Because I think I've heard it just generally speaking in general terms in meetings here and there. What is like the actual written down mission and vision that the framework agreement interprets from, that really holds the framework agreement to certain things? I'm thinking about something about I think there was like a portion in there talking about like land transfers can be done, for example, so long as it's in accordance to the mission and the vision. So what is that concretely speaking? What is that? What is it, right? Because like I said, I've heard general explanations of what it is, but what is it concretely?
Brad, do you want to talk about that? And I will look, I'm looking for the actual citation, because I apologize. Because I have too many things open on my screen, I have to look at the paper version of this. So give me a second to look it up, Alfonso. And Brad, if you want to talk generally about it, that's fine. And if not, then give me just a minute and I'll find it.
So if it would be helpful, in another session, we could do a deeper dive, Alfonso, into the National Western Center master plan. If more of a deep dive into that, there are mission and vision statements in the National Western Center master plan, and some guiding principles. We've talked about those before, guiding principles around community and neighborhood integration, engaging the river and nature, celebrating Western heritage, inspire health and wellness, build cultural crossroads, not crosswords, that's a whole different thing, crossroads, be pioneering, break trail and foster innovation, create fun and entertaining experiences, grow local, regional, and global intelligence, and embrace an ethic of regeneration. The vision statements that's in the National Western Center Master Plan reads: the National Western Center celebrates the pioneering spirit and promise of the West through year-round experiential, lifelong learning, the arts, entertainment, competition, and commerce. And the mission statement, I don't have it right in front of me, and adds in the piece of goes from local to global, but focuses on global food production and the concept of how we're going to sustainably feed 9 billion people in the year 2050.
And Brad, Jenna just put the link to the mission page from the website into the chat.
Great.
And that has the mission statement plus the guiding principles. So you can find that there at that link.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. It's in here, Alfonso, and I can't put my hands on it right now, but I'm going to get you I think there's a citation to what Brad just read. And what I'm not sure about is whether I'm missing it in the document or if it's in the definitions. So I apologize. It's a big document and I don't have it right in front of me, but I will get you the actual, I know you guys it's helpful to have citations, and I will get that to you.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, just for the benefit of the group is really what it's about.
Yep.
And I think, thank you for your explanation as well, Brad. I think my follow-up question to that is that it sounds like, and I just went to the link that's on the website, and right there, it's also citing the master plan. So does that mean that the framework agreement is citing the master plan as where the mission and vision is stated? And if that's the case, does that make the master plan a legally applicable document?
I mean, going back to
just very quickly, or is there a separate definition that has been defined specifically inside of the framework agreement?
I don't believe it's defined in the framework agreement by reference to the master plan, but I'll clear that up. If I could find it right now, I could tell you, but I don't, it's not my recollection that it is. Oh, sorry, Francisco, I'm sorry. I'm talking too fast again. I will find the citation to the document and clear that up. I apologize for not knowing. I wish
Got
I
it.
did.
And I'm
Typically, I would say that, and this is from my days at community planning and development, you know, plans are not the legally binding documents. I mean, that's why they are guiding documents for decisions to be made. So in land use, it would be a master plan or a plan like a neighborhood plan would guide community planning and development in taking their staff position pro or con against an application for a rezoning, for example. So in this case, the framework agreement, I would assume, Jen, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, would be the document that would be the, you know, legally binding document, but decisions made through the process would be informed by guiding principles and strategies that are listed in the master plan, similar to what we've said about the site plan, that the site plans that were shown and locations of buildings that were shown in the National Western Center master plan were examples of how a solution might work. You know, for example, on phases 1 and 2, the original site plan had rail line being located up against the river edge. And when the site planning really got into some of the detailing and we were looking back at, you know, how do we, you know, one of the guiding principles around engage river and nature, that was turning into a problem. It was creating problems elsewhere on the site. So it was decided to move the rail line in the site plan over to kind of a consolidated rail area along the Burlington Northern line and the RTD line, which is where it sits today. Same would be true for any future phases. The site plan that's in the master plan today is an example of a solution, but is, you know, not to be considered at all to be, you know, gospel of where things have to happen.
great. Thanks, Brad. I'm looking for additional questions here.
I'll just say, I'm going to put this in the chat, but Alfonso, the reference that I was looking for that I remembered being there is in section 16. It's in the cooperative statement, and it just has a very simple mission and vision cited. It's simple and straightforward.
Is it the
Great.
same as what's on the website and the master plan? Or is it?
Let me tell you, I think it's shorter than that, Nola. It says the vision is well, maybe it's the same. The vision is the global destination for agricultural heritage and innovation. And the mission is convene the world at the National Western Center to lead, inspire, create, educate, and entertain in pursuit of global food solutions.
Yes. That's the same language.
Is that the same? Okay.
It is.
And I went too fast. I'm sorry. I just did that again.
And then we have Jorge.
Yes, I just have a simple question. What I have here right now has been pretty confusing. And maybe if there was a way that you could answer some questions, like, for example, A, this is what we will do for the neighborhood. B, this is how we are going to do hiring to make sure that minorities and women are equally represented in the personnel. C, this is how we are going to maintain a protection to the land around our business so that it doesn't result in being another gentrifying that will expel people in the neighborhood. D, we will maintain this as part of a mission statement. In other words, what I'm saying is we need you to really clear and crystallize some of the things that are important to the community. Because you have to understand the image that the Western has had for all of us. It has been this big white master coming in here that has no connection to the community. Am I still there?
Yep.
That has no connection to the community and is mostly interested in whoever is going to bring their cows from wherever in the world they bring them, and invite everybody from all the way from Alaska to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to come and visit for 2 or 3 weeks, and never knowing that there's a neighborhood of people that have lived here for almost a century, if not more, that have been working very hard and very proudly to maintain their families, and that the Western has never had a hand in helping those families. That's all I have to say.
And you said it very well, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jorge. Did Brad or anyone have any comments on that? Or I do also want to share, we do have some guiding principles that the board did at the very beginning. And I'll get a link to those as well. Those are going to be on the community page. Not all of this is posted yet, but one of the first things that the Community Benefits Committee did was come together and talk about, especially making sure that this campus will, work on workforce issues. And I think part of the goal of this was to bring everybody together to talk about how to create connections between this campus and the neighborhood. So we'll keep working on that. Brad, did you have any comments there?
Just a quick follow-up on your comment, Liz and Jorge. I thought you said that very well. Thank you. I think that the document that Liz is referring to, the Community Benefits Guiding Principles document that the board adopted, I don't think it doesn't go far enough to answer your specific questions, because you're asking for, for us to be specific, and that's a very fair ask and request. And the Guiding Principles document generally talks about more goals and approaches and methodologies, but it is not the specific answer that you are asking us to answer. And I think honestly today we don't have that answer, and that is, and I think part of the challenges we've had is that I think we've tried, and big projects like this one's tried to answer that question in ways that are not effective. I think a lot of times we try to answer that questions by asking more questions of the community. What do you want? And then they take the answers and then kind of disappear and come back with the solutions that they think are going to work. And what we've heard from the community in these conversations we've been having over the past months, and I'll say this, and please correct me if I'm hearing it wrong, is that the community wants to be an integral partner at the table, figuring out exactly what those things are and co-creating with all of us those specifics of what they are. And we completely agree with that. It will take more work from all of us. It'll be harder to do it. It'll probably take more time, but I think the hope from all of us is that the solutions that will come from a process like that really is co-created will be more relevant, more responsive, and what the community wants, because they've created them, and that's what we're committed to. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're asking for enough trust to get to engage in this process. I'm thrilled that we've got so many people here tonight. We're starting to grow this group, and we need to continue to do that. But the proof is yet to be seen. We haven't come up with those answers that address the very things that you've described. But that is our goal to do so. Great.
Thanks, Brad. And we have 4 hands up, so I'll start with Nola. Thanks for your patience, Nola.
Sure. So I just wanted to go back to the framework agreement related to, I think, the points that Jorge is bringing up, is that, the framework agreement doesn't include community commitments. Community is a piece of, should be in the framework agreement, really, and is not. And I think that's just a big gap. I would say the same thing about the mission and vision, that there's the community is missing from that. So my question is, how do we amend the framework agreement and/or the mission and vision? And I mean, just making a statement that I do think, a lot of the community benefits were supposed to be in the phases 3 through 8. And so a related question to that is, would there, will there be another framework agreement type thing for phases 3 through 8? And could that be a place for community commitments, or would amending the existing framework agreement make more sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Nola. I don't, so let me take the easy part of that, and then maybe move to the part that I don't quite know the answer to. The question about how you amend the framework agreement, all 4 parties to the framework agreement would agree to amend it, and then that would take, on the city side, approval by city council. And then it would take approval by CSU's board, approval by WSSA's board, and approval by the authority board, is just sort of the technical answer to your question. The second part, is that, okay. The second part of your question about where the appropriate place would be to include community benefits, I think is a great question. And I think until we know what phases 3 through 8, or what I think we'll call future phases of the campus look like, I don't know that we can answer that question, except, Nola, to say that we anticipate that it needs to be addressed. If that might be an amendment to the framework agreement, it might be a new agreement, it might be a separate community benefits agreement, but it depends on what kind of community benefits we're talking about. Who's making the commitment, for example, would determine where that goes in a document. And then what the commitment is may also dictate where that commitment lies. And so I don't, if you handed me a list of things, I want these 4 commitments, and I could give you a better idea of where I think that probably ends up. But honestly, it's something, Nola, that I think we need to talk about as a group in terms of what those commitments are, who's making them, and then figuring out where they belong on paper.
Great, thanks, Jen.
Does that address your question, Nola? Because I don't mean to dodge your question. I'm not sure I have a clear answer.
Perfect, thanks. AE?
So just in terms of historical nuts and bolts, and then forward nuts and bolts on employment, for example, it is absolutely the case that community constituents, neighborhood constituents were very involved both with the National Western Center and I-70 for the imperative of local hiring, especially in the zip code 80216, but along the corridor with the freeway as well, to be a priority and written in to the project implementation commitments. It's my understanding in that direction, and for us to pay close attention to, that the city of Denver put $500,000 into forming Work Now, which had a mandate and has a mandate for local hire. And I would like to just say that I think that the programmatic details, the follow-up, the communications, the interactions are all areas where there needs to be better relationships into the populations that can receive the benefits immediately economically in their individual lives with these projects. And some of that has happened, but it has not been as fully developed and created, and there's lots of things that can be done, but I'm a little concerned, Brad Buchanan, there's two Brads, so with saying it's going to be hard work, it's going to take a long time, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's real specific things that are the realities of life in any neighborhood that have to do with environment and that have to do with jobs, that have to do with access and mobility, that have been in conversations and are built into these two projects. So anyway, I just want to say if the local hire, for example, has not succeeded in saturation, if the mentoring with the partners, whether it's CSU or any of the partners, the city, the Western Stock, so if it hasn't succeeded, it needs to be built on, evaluated, but there are some nuts and bolts there. There are some foundational inroads. So I want to keep those in the jigsaw puzzle.
Great, thanks, AE. Jorge?
Yes, I would like to, number one, I would like to congratulate the people of the Western that were able to open up their policy-making ideas and the community participation by allowing inviting some of the neighborhood people to come in and be part of a board. I think that's a very good first pass. On the other hand, there are some specifics, and maybe you need to understand that the Western has become has been traditionally, and here we're dealing with historical practices like A had said, and I agree with her. You have been so divorced from the neighborhood that you don't even know who lives here. You don't even know the Polish church in the middle of it. You don't know anything. You don't know that the neighborhoods have no supermarket. They have to go miles and miles away to buy their food. There's no supermarket. There is not a hospital or a clinic. There is not a place where they can safely play or send their children. Some of the schools are in the neighborhood are polluted and nobody has ever paid attention to it. The Board of Education has been such an elitist organization that never care. This is your chance for you to become part of the history of the neighborhood. And this is your chance. And I shouldn't say yours, it should be ours, because we're here with you and we're going to continue helping you. I saw as something very, very hopeful that you included Sandra as one of the members of the board. I think that's fantastic. She's one of the most active people that I have ever known. She's creative and she's intelligent. And she has the voice of the neighborhood in many, many ways. So I do appreciate that. And first I want to say thanks to you and for having this meeting.
Brad, did you want to jump in?
Just quickly, Jorge, too, you know, the National Western Stock Show, it's been around for more than 100 years, and I know has had you know, mixed success with the community. I understand. I hear you loud and clear. The National Western Center and the National Western Authority were formed through the framework agreement in 2017. And so the National Western Stock Show will happen for 16 days in January. But there will also be, there's 11 other months of the year where the National Western Center Authority operates, programs the campus. And so we are very much committed to addressing the very things that you are talking about, to have conversations just like the one we're having tonight and that we've been having over the last number of months and actually the last number of years, to improve the relationship, the quality of the relationship, and the experience and the connection that the community has to this campus. If we don't do that, we've just failed, and that's just not, anything short of that is unacceptable. So I hear you, and I just want you to know that the National Western Center Authority is very much committed, and the National Western Center Master Plan and the framework agreement, as we've discussed, are guiding documents to just the beginning of those conversations to then we can build on to get to the most authentic and relevant contributions and experiences that you're describing, creating a place for the community where you can get healthy, affordable foods, a place that is of the community and by the community, so that it is a community place. You don't feel like you're a visitor in your own community.
Thanks, Brad. And Mercedes, I think I put your hand down and I didn't mean to. Did you have a comment? And I apologize. Operator error.
Sí,
Go ahead.
sí, nada más yo quiero comentar, ¿verdad? Que permítame. Yo nada más quería comentar, bueno, yo soy parte de la coalición GS y nosotros somos navegadoras con las familias de la coalición y tenemos nosotros contacto con familias y me habló una familia preguntándome si tenían la coalición boletos gratis para el rodeo que pasó. Entonces yo le dije que no, que nosotros no teníamos acceso a esos boletos y no sabía dónde podía obtenerlos gratis. Yo pienso que la comunidad debe de tener acceso a esos boletos, a la comunidad de bajos recursos, porque desgraciadamente ellos, bueno, también me cuento, ¿verdad? Que nosotros no podemos pagar un boleto, ¿verdad? Con los bajos salarios que ellos están ganando y con la crisis de COVID, son gastos muy fuertes en el hogar, entonces ellos no tienen el privilegio de asistir a esos eventos. Yo pienso que deben de tomar en cuenta también a las familias que de bajos recursos y todos los eventos que traen, pues prácticamente no benefician a la comunidad. Afectan, al contrario, lo afectan con las calles que ocupan los parqueaderos de las personas. Bueno, los parqueaderos de las calles los ocupan y las familias pues no tienen dónde parquearse. Ellos batallan mucho con el parqueadero. Y pues todo lo que van a hacer, pues yo pienso que no hay un beneficio para la comunidad. Al contrario, es un desalojo para la comunidad. Porque hay más, llegan más personas, si van a hacer un hotel, llegan a rentar y pues es algo que va a perjudicar también al vecindario. Me gustaría que si se va a hacer un hotel o que sean parte lo de la comunidad que puedan trabajar en esos empleos que ocupen, porque desgraciadamente no ocupan los empleos de nuestra comunidad, ocupan mejor otros trabajadores de fuera y lo de nuestra comunidad quedan fuera. Entonces yo pienso que deberían de considerar a nuestras familias de bajos recursos porque ellos también tienen derecho, ¿verdad? Porque ellos son afectados afectados totalmente en toda la palabra, porque de tanto desarrollo que tenemos a nuestro alrededor, ha sido afectada con desplazamiento. Entonces nosotros queremos que seamos parte de esos desarrollos para que nuestra comunidad pues, reciba algo de todos esos desarrollos para que se beneficie la comunidad en algo. Eso es todo. Gracias.
Thank you, Mercedes. I'm going to jump in. Brad had a problem with his audio, and so he didn't hear all of that. So I'm going to jump in, and then Brad, you can add on. But you make really good points, Mercedes. And so, you know, the National Western Stock Show is an event that's 16 days of the year, and we at the authority do not run that event. But we certainly will take your comments back to them and share them. But we do want to share that we have our first event coming to the National Western Center over in the new buildings, and that is the Jurassic World. It's an exhibition. It's a dinosaur show that's coming, and as part of the contract, we negotiated for tickets to make available to the community, and so we have done that for this particular event. I want you to know that we're talking with lots of people in lots of organizations to think of and talk about the best way to distribute those vouchers for tickets. And so we would welcome anybody's input on the most equitable way to do that. And so we want to work with the community. And certainly we have another group called the Community Investment Fund Committee, and that there are members of that group here tonight, and they are working on what are revenue sources from this National Western Center that can go into this fund, which was created it's the one truly community related thing in the framework agreement. It was created, it requires the authority to hold a fund that will benefit from revenues and other sources at the National Western Center. And that Community Investment Fund Committee group, and I'll welcome anybody to hop in and talk about it, are talking about what are the best sources of funds for that community investment fund, and how are we, how will that community group then distribute those through a community-based process. So as we start opening the facilities that we are operating on the campus, the very first things that we're asking ourselves are, what are the things that we can do to engage the community and to benefit the community? So it's tickets, it's having revenues from the event go into the community investment fund. It's also creating opportunities for jobs. A lot of them are the supporting jobs on the campus that we have, including landscaping and snow shoveling and concessions and those things. And all of those will have a component where we're talking about how can we access local workforce and bring people together and bring people onto the campus. Brad, I don't know if you want to add anything on top of that, but I know that was a long answer, but it's been top of mind for us.
No, I think you said it really well. The only addition I would have is that, the Jurassic exhibit that's going on is really going to be, I think, a great opportunity for us, and we're working this open book with the Community Investment Fund Committee to assess, what's realistic at the level of operations we are at right now. The campus will kind of operate in different scales. So for right now, it's the stockyards, and it's the Stockyards Event Center, and then the next level will be when the Livestock Center is completed and becomes operational. The next step will be, future phases on the campus, and at each one of those levels, there'll be larger dollars flowing through the campus, and and thus greater benefits and ability to contribute to the community investment fund in other and greater ways. So we want to start now so that we have an understanding what all those things are. The first contribution that's happening was the $400,000 of technical assistance dollars that we're working to understand, how the community best wants to use those funds. That will be the first contribution to the Community Investment Fund by the National Western Center Authority, as we work through that part.
Great, thanks, Brad. And Anne, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to make a statement about, and in regard to historical context, that although we are no longer going down the path of the RFP, that is ancient history, I do believe the city had created a set of criteria for any developers who had wanted to win the development of the Triangle land. And the city created this set of criteria after community input. So it would be a shame to lose that set of information. And I don't know what is still held by the city to share, but I do know that there were responses to this set of criteria, and it did have community benefit in it. And maybe some of that can be shared just as ideas and inspiration as how to go forward, because I do believe, just anecdotally, I know that there was affordable housing in some of the plans and, other types of things that the community is looking for. So, it would be a shame to lose all of that info. So that is my comment. And Liz, I sent you that announcement when they were putting out the RFP, and some of those criteria are listed early on. So maybe you and Brad and Jen can speak to that as well.
Jen, do you have anything you want to add to that? I mean, we can certainly find, there are documents, we can certainly go back in those documents, because you're right, there's a lot in those documents that I think will be helpful moving forward in this.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, Anne, and maybe I'll just follow up with you and make sure that we're talking about the same thing. There was a whole section of the RFP that talked about some specific requirements in terms of community benefits. But then there was additional language that said, and we expect you to bring more, particularly with your approach to the built environment, and so that those requirements permeated the RFP. So I agree with you, and not that they can't change, just that they're another sort of way to look at what's been done and see what adjustments we need to make, or if we need to throw it out wholesale and start over, that's fine too. But for sure we can make that available. Point out what that is.
I just want to acknowledge that work there and those expectations were there. I think there are some community members who may not be aware of that process and think that it was never even discussed. So I just think bringing everyone's awareness up to what has happened historically would be helpful.
Sure.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen. Roberta?
Yes. Hi, I'm Roberta.
Hi.
I live in Globeville. And I just wanted to add in some things that we could do to make this thing work. For sure, we need to have some scholarships for some of our kids. We have some very talented kids in Globeville, Swansea, and Elyria, and they deserve some scholarships to go to the school and learn and be a bigger part of what we can have in this community. We can do co-ops. I mean, there is so much talent here that we need to use the talent that we have around us to it'll make everything just thrive if we will all just work together. And if we could trust each other that what we say is what we mean, and not do all that talking to us one way in the face and then doing something different on paper. Let's just be real with each other, and let's just really work together to have a community and a workplace that we all can work together in, because it will make things so much happier. We're helping our own community. We're helping our people in business. It just can work so well if we would just be honest with each other and very open about what we're doing, and not give us one thing one week and a whole nother thing the next week. that can be very beneficial to us.
Excellent. Thanks for those comments. Let's see, Francisco, you are back in, hold on, I think I need to move you back into the interpretation room. Yeah, hold on one second. I don't know why you guys have come out of the interpretation room. Fascinating. Let me just update and see if you're back on my screen. So let's see. Okay. Francisco, do you want to talk and I'll see if I hear you? Oh. Yes, I can hear you. So. Oh, that's very strange. No, well, I have it. I have it on manage language interpretation. Sorry, I apologize. You guys were having this little technical difficulty. I wonder if I need to, I'll just re-add you guys maybe. Let me try that and see what happens. Yep. Sorry. Let's try that. And then I'm going to add another one in language. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. Fascinating. English, Spanish. I apologize, everybody. Let me try to get this fixed. Spanish. Update. Oh, are we? Okay. Okay. Excellent. Okay, thank you. I apologize. I don't know. That was very strange. Okay, perfect. Apologies, everyone. Roberta, did you have additional things to say? Or were you finished? I can't remember if I put your hand down or not.
No, I think I'm good for this minute.
You are. Excellent. Thank you. And what I was going to say to you was that, and I am happy to, I'm going to have to collect email addresses from this group. I don't have everybody's email address, and so we can talk about the best way for me to get those. But Colorado State University does offer scholarships, and we will get you that information. And the National Western Stock Show also has a Denver specific scholarship program. So CSU is obviously scholarships to CSU. The National Western Stock Show Scholarship Trust scholarships are ones that are given to kids from Denver to attend different universities to study things around agriculture and the future of food and all of those things. So I'm happy to get that information to you. But I love that you said co-ops, because one of the things we've joined the community wealth building group that talks a lot about, we as our organization that talk about how can we do procurements and how can we bring people in to work on this campus in different ways. And we have some flexibility. And I would love us to pursue eventually with time as we go through this process, because we have small procurements now that will grow. But to find, folks that have small businesses that can come together and eventually be able to meet the needs of this enormous campus as a co-op and as working together. And so that is something that is on our radar, and then we talk about regularly, and that we're excited about in terms of workforce and bringing people onto the campus. So I just wanted to respond to that. And then I will, let's see, I think we have, I don't know, Brad, do you have anything you wanted to add to that? I just wanted to make sure that we knew. Great. Perfect. AE, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of do a procedure check here because we have an agenda, and I do want to say, I hope we will keep these discussions open on these different models. I myself have a great deal of affection and appreciation for co-ops. It's one of the various models. The whole process of supporting small businesses and family-owned businesses in Denver is a discussion I also want to just highlight, because it's not interpreted the comment that I put in the chat that regarding codifying at the city council, at the city level, local hire, et cetera. I think that's great and it should be done, but we do not have to wait. There is a constituent will. There are beginnings of programs. We can move rapidly. This is
It's already happening on the National Western campus.
There's a process that is in place over many years of discussions. And so I just wanted to emphasize that every day progress can be made. And I'm lost my track being interrupted there. But the point I wanted to make about the agenda is I appreciate, Liliana, that you put a little bit of a reference to the CIF in the chat. That was one of the requests specifically to get a CIF. There haven't been joint CAC, NWC, CAC open meeting, joint meetings with the CIF. There's some misconceptions about that. I think that the process has gotten a little fuzzy around the edges. And I do think that the inclusivity is expanding, but there are formalities in the process too that come out of the framework agreement we have to address. So we're short on time, but I just wanted to throw that in because the agenda hasn't gotten specifically to that discussion, and the criteria and the process for getting a rich selection and clear job definitions and that sort of thing for the community representatives on the on the authority board. So maybe Liz, you can somehow prioritize some things here, and we haven't discussed the question specifically from GES on that agenda. GES Coalition, just helping that out.
Absolutely. AE, thank you so much, because I think we get into these discussions and we just want to keep going because I think so many people have a lot to say, but you're right. We did have a set agenda for this meeting, and we've obviously gone over time. So at this point, I'd like to ask the question to the GES Coalition folks that are on the phone. Is now the right time? We have probably 15 minutes left. We had a few other things on the agenda and AE highlighted those. I wanted to make reference to and Armando mentioned it in the chat, make mention of the community members on the board and setting standards or guidelines for those folks. That's one bucket. And then the other bucket is really talking about how do we move forward. So Nola, could you, maybe you or Alfonso or other GS Coalition folks, I don't know who wants to kind of speak here, but we don't have any other hands up. And so if we could move to kind of talking about those questions and whether we, set up another time to have a more in-depth discussion of those. Is that something folks want to do? There just seems to be so much, but I want to note that we have 34 people on this call, and every time we have, this is our third meeting, and the group grows every time, and that's been the goal. And so, but then, there is some utility to kind of identifying how to move forward and address all of these buckets of things that need to be done, which I'm trying to track. But Noah, did you have some comments about the questions and what you think you might want to do?
I can just make some brief comments, and then I do think we should move to the community representatives on the authority. And Alfonso, I think, has some comments as well. So I just wanted to say, first of all, that the answer, we were pretty disappointed by the answers, to be completely honest. And they were really incomplete. It felt like pieces of answers, or something that would be referred to that then didn't have a citation in the framework agreement, for instance, and then we couldn't figure out what it was talking about. So there were just a lot of questions that were incomplete. All the final questions were like barely answered. And so there were a lot of pieces of what this exchange, I guess, of questions and then answers that I think aren't centering the community, aren't getting to where we want to be as far as moving our goals as community. And so, I was also very shocked and disappointed by a lot of the documents that were referred to, like that the utilization, that we're talking about utilization for the stock show that was, you know, a study that was done in 2014 that refers to, you know, Olympic size skating arenas and things like, it's really confusing to look at those things and know, like, are we talking about now? Is this our reality? And is this the conversation, this back and forth that we need to be having right now? Are these documents still relevant? So I'm going to pass to Alfonso, but that's just kind of some of my observations about the answers to the questions right now.
Great, thanks, Nola. Alfonso?
I think the only thing that I would add, and I think is important to highlight, and is part of the reasoning why we were slightly disappointed, pretty disappointed by the answers to our questions initially, is that, you know, there's a whole lot of citing of the framework agreement, but I think that the authority and the city also has a sort of obligation when answering those type of questions that people from the community pose to, you know, for example, explain to us how you interpret those sections of the framework agreement that you're referring to. I think that's very important just moving forward. I think as well, just for the context of any conversations that are held here or any other National Western Center or city related spaces, you know, especially in regards to the website, that there's an acknowledgement to a lot of the context of where this thing is coming from, you know. I'm not sure if Nola mentioned it, but, you know, I know that in the email response that you did, Brad did recognize that the questions, and tonight it's being recognized that questions have been submitted by coalition and work with our neighbors. But I think, you know, hosting on your website and not mentioning that context, not mentioning the context of like CAC conversations and the origin of these conversations is a disservice to our community. So I'd really just like for that to be standard practice, if possible, moving forward. That's all I would have to add.
When he says he, but he means we, the community. And the same thing with what Nola said. Just so you know, they speak for us.
Excellent. Thank you, Roberta.
And I would just offer, we have started a list of questions that we have in response to the answers to the questions, and want to offer to all community members on the CAC here, or anyone that would like to add to those questions. I'll be reaching out to you all to just to hear more what you're thinking, so that we can make a more comprehensive list and back. And or look through together, Alfonso said. So just want to make that offer to everyone on here to either add to the list of questions or have a conversation about the questions. But pretty large scale gaps that I felt like this exchange has brought up.
So Nola, quickly, how will folks that are on this call, do you want them to send things to you? What is the best way for you to collect those questions? And then we have to talk about the next step in the process of sitting down to reconcile everything. So, and I use reconcile is probably not the right word, but to sit down and hear those questions in response to the answers. But how do you want people to communicate that information to you?
Feel free to call or email myself, Alfonso, anyone from the coalition that you all know, and we'll consolidate. I think I don't think there's anyone I don't know on the call, so okay. I'll put my information in the chat too.
Excellent.
If they just contact us in any way, whether it's now or wherever, we'll forward them the link. You know, just for all intents and purposes, you know, these questions are not done, and you know, we're doing it in tandem with our community members. So we just wouldn't want to put the link right now because, you know, there are, as you know yourself, Liz, Brad, there are people in the authority here, and we think that neighbors, you know, have reserved the right to a little bit of privacy when we're discussing this sort of thing openly in community. But you know, if we're not prepared to submit questions, you know, we definitely wouldn't want to just drop the link right here.
Got it.
Jen, did you want to ask a question?
Liz, just one comment, Councilwoman, before you jump in. Our goal is to get these these questions answered to, fully to your satisfaction. So we're happy to understand where the answers fell short, or what parts seemed vague, or and to provide the background information. Happy to do whatever it takes to get there on that.
That's all I was going to say also.
Yep. Councilwoman?
So two quick things. I just wanted to clarify with AE and Brad Dobson, you can clarify this as well, that National Western is in fact participating in the goals program that has been identified for local hire, and you guys were the pilot for launching that whole thing, and there are other city projects that have participated. So the initial phase, included some participation, but all these next contracts will also be participating in that as well. The ordinance moving forward will include a lot of other city projects, ensuring that we have a commitment for local hire for people from all of our neighborhoods that want to be hired onto these projects. So I just wanted to clarify that. And Brad, if you want to maybe just say yes or no in the chat instead of taking time away from the community, I think that would be great. And then the last thing I think that's really important is both groups have small numbers of people participating, and these neighborhoods represent about 10,000 people. So I'm just curious what the strategy and effort is to ensure that the dialogue is much broader in terms of representing the voices of others in the community who have not been invited to engage in these conversations, so that you're getting more broad representation. The last thing I'll share is that we're almost done with a comprehensive list of all the projects that the city has funded that we will share with you all, so that when you start identifying priorities, then we'll be able to figure out, you all can look at that and see what's been done and what's funded that's yet to be done, as you all start identifying the priorities with the broader community.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman. I'm going to go right down the line on the question. Sandra? Oh, Sandra, you're muted. Sandra. You're on mute, Sandra.
Ready? Yeah.
Ready, yep.
Voy a hablar en español. Creo que tenemos que estar un poco más organizados con este tipo de reuniones. Son nuevas, así que estamos aprendiendo, pero sí creo que tenemos que respetar la agenda que hay. Claro que hay muchísimas preguntas. Tal vez podríamos pensar en hacer 2 reuniones por mes. No sé, hay muchísimas reuniones. No sé qué tanta disponibilidad tengan las personas para tener 2 reuniones al mes, y simplemente porque ya hay una agenda. También creo que al hacer estas reuniones fue por la necesidad de tener una relación más profunda con el National Western, que no teníamos como comunidad. A pesar que teníamos representantes de la comunidad, no existía esa relación con la comunidad realmente. Creo que ahorita va a haber un cambio. Ya vemos más personas de la comunidad que estamos interesados realmente en la comunidad, en el beneficio de la comunidad. Y a lo de las preguntas del GS Coalition, creo que también es importante que como individuos hagan sus propias preguntas, que no tengan el miedo de hacer este tipo de preguntas, de enviarlas también directamente a National Western, a este grupo en grande. Entiendo la razón de que lo quieren hacer un poco más como grupo y todo eso, pero creo que también es importante entender que hay personas que tienen su propia voz, personas que no se sienten tal vez a gusto en grupos. Y bueno, creo que tenemos que trabajar más en cómo poder hacer que estas reuniones sean más productivas, valgan más, y no estoy diciendo que no lo sean. Creo que escuchamos muchos comentarios muy buenos, en sí todos los comentarios son muy buenos, las preguntas muy buenas, pero cómo podemos respetar el tiempo de las personas, el tiempo de todos los que estamos aquí, y también cómo podemos respetar la agenda que ya está aquí, ¿no? Entonces, creo que sí deberíamos de pensar en el futuro, cómo podemos, si se puede hacer 2 reuniones al mes, para poder sacar provecho de estas reuniones bien y que todos puedan participar y dar su opinión.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sandra. I'm going to take Yadira, and then I do want to double back to the process and meetings and that real fast. But I wanted to give Yadira a chance to speak quickly. Go ahead,
Hi,
Yadira.
guys. I will try to be fast. I have a small question and a few comments. One of the questions was that there were said about 2 groups. I want to know what are the 2 groups that they were mentioning. And then my comment was, we already have a lot of people, and it seems like there's a complaint that there's a lot of people already. Now, you imagine if we bring all of the community. I think that the way that the coalition is doing it right now is trying to go out and get information from a lot of community members, and not just focused areas, but the whole 80216, and trying to make sure that everybody gets heard, just to try to avoid everybody wanting to speak at the same time. Because if we do that, then how are we ever going to get processed with anything that's on an agenda? That's a comment. Another comment was that this is exactly what it looks like when we add more people onto your meetings, is that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to express their thoughts and ask their questions, because they're probably not at par with everything that is happening like you all are. So, making time for all of that, if this is what you guys are including, I feel like the coalition has worked really hard to try to outreach every single spot for the community. It's just that not everybody has the time to show up or represent, right? And those that do, this is exactly what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Yadira. So we are at 6:34, and we had 2 more kind of items on the agenda, and I want to make a quick comment and respond to Armando's questions in the chat. And then I think all of these more recent comments kind of come to what our next steps are. So first, Armando has asked about the community members on the National Western Center Authority Board. And just to make a quick statement about that, the framework agreement and the bylaws of the National Western Center Authority say that there are to be 2 GES residents that sit on the board. One of those residents is a non-voting member, and one of those residents is a voting member. Both those residents are appointed by the mayor. So what has happened in the past is the mayor has appointed the people, and then they have terms of office. And so Sandra, who just spoke, Sandra Ruiz, was in the last year was appointed to serve as the non-voting member of the board. She replaced Gabby Acevedo, who was unable to serve anymore because she had a job and could not make it to the meetings. So Sandra has served as our non-voting member. And then John Zapien, who was a longtime resident of the community, was the voting member. John's term ended at the end of last year, and he decided not to seek reappointment, which opened up the voting position to appointment. So we notified the mayor's office that the discussions were happening in this group about a desire of the community members to begin to figure out guidelines or put some information around what they thought community members that served on the board needed to do. And so in the interest of that, the mayor's office is very interested in hearing about the guidelines and standards for members on citizen members on the National Western Center Authority Board. And they knew that would take some time. And the other thing they knew is that they didn't want the voting seat to sit empty. And so they have moved Sandra Ruiz as the appointee in the voting seat. So she is now the voting member on the National Western Center Authority Board. And the non-voting seat is now open. And so one of the agenda items tonight was to talk about the process. How does this group want to come together to talk about standards and guidelines for community members that then will be shared with the mayor's office? The mayor ultimately makes this appointment, but I think that there's a lot of room for the community groups, for the community to talk about who, how, expectations once they're appointed, all of those things. So I'm going to put that like on the list of how does this group want to begin that process to start the list of guidelines and standards for the community members. Then I want to double back and revisit the GS coalition questions. So we clearly need to do more work on those. And I think in some ways, and I'm open to hear what you guys have to say, but I think some of that has to be, sitting and talking, you're submitting additional questions, but also at some point, having an open conversation about it and getting clarification in a discussion about those questions. So those are a couple of things that are, that are outstanding that I just want to put out there for you all and hear your thoughts on how to move forward with addressing those issues. And then third, we have not set a regular set of meetings yet. We've done it. We did a couple. This one was supposed to be on a Thursday, but we didn't do it on a Thursday because it was running into another meeting. So Sandra has just suggested, do we do 2 meetings a week? I mean, two meetings a week. Oh my goodness. 2 meetings a month. Would that be too much? Is that not enough? And so and then I guess the question is that we have a lot of great and productive discussion, but do there need to be working groups of people that are, want to work on certain topics and then bring it back to the broader group? The Community Investment Fund group has not presented to the broader group yet. That was another thing that I have on my list. So I guess I'm just pointing out that there's a lot. And we want at the National Western Center Authority to support you all in moving forward in the best way possible to, be able to address some of these things and take some action if that's what you're wanting to do. So
Liz, there's a very important legal clarification within the context of the framework that has to be made because of how you stated something.
Okay, go ahead, Aggie.
It was a very specific protection to the community representation that if the voting member became unable to serve or if it was vacated, the vote would still be active with the alternative. If you're saying that the alternate has, or the non-voting member has moved over to the seat, that has a different connotation. It implies that the application should be to the non-voting. That has to be said real clearly. And I want to be very clear, this has nothing to do with you, Sandra, personally, or anybody, but that we have to, that framework agreement is a legal document. We need to be clear in communicating with each other. Also, the framework document specifically stipulates that there will be a National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee. And I'm concerned about the lack of formality with this transition. Liz, you consistently refer to this is our 3rd meeting, but we can, we have kind of let fall by the wayside the discussions of this mechanism. and where do we root it to make sure that we are having we do have a foothold in the framework agreement that identifies community, even though it's not necessarily where we want it to be. So we need to, end this meeting, but I just really, for everyone, can we please keep these things on the table? There seems to be diverging schools of thought here, and I don't want to lose the momentum out of this process where we do have mechanisms. We have to figure a better way to administer and facilitate this transition. So I hope we'll talk to each other more about it and figure out a way to do it along the lines of everyone's suggestions.
Oh, thanks, AE. Does anybody else have any other comments or thoughts? So Liliana has made a good statement. She said she'd like more clarification about the purpose of this group and these meetings that will help us focus on the agenda and work what this group will take on. So, and I think that's that's exactly the question, right? We've expanded the number of people, and we know that there are certain areas that folks seem to be interested in and have expressed interest in, and how do we get this really large body of work done? And one of them is the future phases of this campus, which is part of this, how this next set of meetings, when CAC is being passed off to, from the National Western Stock Show to the National Western Center Authority. There are certain components of that have always, there's been report back and discussion of items. And so this is something that people in a couple of the first meetings were expressing, we want to be able to tell you what we want to do. And we are here to support and, provide the framework and the staff to answer questions and do things. But it's really about how do you guys want to move forward in terms of the buckets of things that need to be done? The phases 3 through 8 seems to be one thing. Talking about just getting good, consistent updates about what's happening on the campus now in terms of construction and procurements and workforce and all of those things. How do you want to address the issue of resident members on the board? So I think that we're kind of at this point, we can schedule another meeting and talk and try to stick more to the agenda. I mean, I think we bit off a lot in this meeting, but do any of you guys have thoughts on this? I am happy to schedule another meeting if we can just put this on the calendar for at least a monthly meeting, recurring at this time. It seemed like we got a pretty good attendance at this meeting and we didn't bump into other meetings. Do we have other thoughts from folks?
Hey, Liz, Maria has her hand up. You may not see it on your screen.
Oh yeah, I wonder how that happened. Sorry about that. And then also Angela Garcia just suggested, do we need work groups, right? Work groups that discuss the questions and other things and then bring information back. So Maria, go ahead.
Ok, yo nada más quiero decir que yo estoy de acuerdo con EI, con lo que acaba de decir. No es nada en contra de Sandra, pero en la reunión donde hablamos de que John Sapian se iba, quedamos en que íbamos a decidir de otra manera, que no queríamos que el alcalde decidiera lo que se iba a hacer y a quién iba a poner. Y que si él decidía, que tomara en cuenta también la opinión de la comunidad. Entonces, no está tomando la opinión de la comunidad. ¿Qué nos está queriendo decir con esto? ¿Que van a hacer lo mismo de siempre? ¿Van a hacer lo que ustedes quieran y como ustedes quieran? Eso no me parece justo para la comunidad. Yo pienso que deben de tomar, si realmente estamos en estas reuniones, es para que tomen en cuenta las opiniones que damos cada uno. Si no van a tomar en cuenta las opiniones de nosotros, no tiene caso que estemos perdiendo el tiempo aquí en la reunión, porque realmente no nos están escuchando. Y lo repito, no es nada en contra de Sandra, pero sí queremos una elección justa. Queremos que todo se haga justo, no que siempre sea la misma situación, que decidan lo que ellos quieren hacer y cómo lo quieran hacer, y que solamente vengan y nos den a tole con el dedo y se vayan como si nada. Gracias.
Thank you, Maria. And Roberta?
Yep, I'm back.
Hello.
So I wanted to talk about the agenda. Yes, we have an agenda and agendas are good, but if we get in a discussion that is what we need to talk about, the agenda is not more important than what we have to talk about. If it takes longer than we thought, we have to do that. So we tabled the rest of the agenda for another meeting. But know that if we get into a conversation and it takes time, that's a valuable time that we're taking because we got to get to the bottom of situation. So I don't want to hear nobody coming on here talking about, well, we have to stick to the agenda. No, we don't. We need to stick to what we need to get. We need to get out what we need to get out. And if it takes a little more time, then that's what we need to do. If it takes another meeting, then that's what we'll have to do. But just know that we're trying to get some business done here now. We're tired of just talking about it. We're going to walk about it and get it done. So whatever it takes.
Great. Thank you, Roberta. Mercedes?
Yo también estoy de acuerdo con la opinión de María Campos. Queremos que nos tomen en cuenta como comunidad, como coalición, como miembros de GES y como representando la comunidad que es Globio, Eliria y Suancia, y queremos claridad y transparencia y que nos tengan respeto como comunidad. Gracias.
Great. Thanks very much. Let's see. Oh, Nancy Santos.
Yo estoy en la misma página de que necesitamos buenos líderes. Hemos tenido líderes, pero lamentablemente pues sí han ido más directamente a lo que son sus intereses para cada quien y sí se han olvidado un poco de la comunidad en sí, lo que es la verdadera comunidad, como lo he dicho casi siempre en todas las juntas, que las diferentes organizaciones que hay aquí en la comunidad de Swansea, Elyria y Gloville tienen sus propios grupitos y lamentablemente la información no está llegando a toda la comunidad porque los grupitos nomás son a los conocidos míos y los conocidos de mis conocidos. Entonces queremos, yo de mi parte, que yo vivo aquí en Swansea, quisiera que hubiera una organización que dedicara todo su tiempo al 100% de ir puerta por puerta, cuadra por cuadra, o calle por calle, dirección por dirección, número de teléfono con líderes o como sea, pero que llegue la información a todas las personas y no nos estén contando a medias de que unas sí sabemos y otras no, porque aquí en esta comunidad se han hecho diferentes organizaciones y han ayudado de diferentes maneras, pero no a todas las personas les ha llegado la información. Entonces, queremos que sea algo justo, pero que la persona que vayan a elegir que sea justa y que dé el 100% de ir puerta por puerta a dar la información que se necesite y no nada más a mis grupitos, los amigos de mis amigos y mis familiares, que sea bien al 100% dedicado a la comunidad y ir de casa por casa, ya sea en Elyria, Gloville y Swansea también. Esa es mi opinión.
¿Puedo hablar?
Who was that?
That was Mercedes.
Soy Mercedes.
Yeah, Mercedes, go ahead.
Yo voy a hablar, ¿verdad? Nosotros nos capacitaron como navegadoras para hablar con nuestros vecinos de la coalición GES, Globio, Elyria y Swansea, y nosotros hemos hecho lo que hemos hecho, tocando puertas, llevando información, hemos tocando, tirando volantes y no más son poquitos volantes. Son demasiados volantes que hemos hecho hasta 3 días tocando puertas, dando la información. Tengo como testiga Carmelita Olague, ella es la que me ha acompañado, Angelina por su cuenta, María a veces nos lleva, ella es la que nos da RAI, y hemos dado la información correcta a nuestra comunidad. Nosotros no tenemos ningún interés de nada más de llevarle la información a mis conocidos. Realmente yo aquí no tengo muchos conocidos y mis familiares no viven aquí, viven en diferentes lugares y nosotros tocamos puerta por puerta y no sabemos quién son, cómo se llaman, pero nosotros llevamos la información adecuada y correcta de lo que se va a informar de la coalición. Eso es mi comentario. Muchas gracias.
Great, thank you, Mercedes. Nancy, did you, and then we'll go to Sandra.
Yes, I would like to respond to that. I'm gonna say it in Spanish or English. That's about, what do you guys, how do you want me to
Either way,
speak?
it's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna do it in Spanish. Yo he visto a Angelina, Mercedes, que han estado dando la información. Sí, yo las he visto. Yo también estuve con GES haciendo lo mismo, de navegadora. Pero yo estoy hablando de mi cuadra. Yo vivo en la 47 y Thompson y aquí no nos ha llegado la información necesaria. Volantes se los darán, no sé, las he visto pasar por aquí, pero no han pasado por esta cuadra.
No.
Y eso
no,
lo tengo yo porque yo las he visto. Evangelina pasa toda la 48, la Clayton, me las he encontrado en la Fillmore, pero en la, yo estoy hablando de la 48 y Thompson, y aquí es muy rara la vez que nos llega información.
no.
Cuando estaba llegando aquí la información a lo que es esta cuadra de la 47 y Thompson, era cuando yo andaba con ustedes. Que yo aquí en mi cuadra, yo repartía los flyers. Aquí en mi cuadra. Pero
no, bueno,
los he visto en diferentes. En Gloveville, en Lidia, las he visto porque anduve con ustedes. Pero yo estoy hablando que no a todos nos está llegando la información.
yo creo depende de las personas que les toca, nosotros,
Great, thank you, Nancy.
como nosotros agarramos.
We have
¿Me
Sandra.
permite hablar?
Sandra, go ahead.
Yo solamente quiero comentar sobre lo que se está hablando. Creo que como comunidad hemos estado en diferentes grupos. Igual yo fui parte del GS Coalition. He sido parte de varios grupos. No se trata de como residentes, hacer esas divisiones o ver quién hizo más, quién hizo no. Mi trabajo, sí, me seleccionaron para ser parte del board en el año pasado y no es al principio del año, ¿no? Fue ya en diciembre. Tengo apenas 2, 3 reuniones que he estado presente. Soy muy nueva, estoy aprendiendo, pero desde un principio yo siempre he estado al favor de la comunidad y creo que he sido muy clara con el National Western de que tienen que crear esa relación y no solamente crear esa relación con la comunidad, sino dar algo a la comunidad. No pueden esperar pedir de la comunidad si no están dando nada a la comunidad. Sí se ha hablado de que han hecho trabajos para la comunidad, que han hecho esto para la comunidad, pero la comunidad no lo ha visto. Hay números de cuántas personas están trabajando en el National Western. Toda esa información es la que importa. Y sí creo que como comunidad, a veces tenemos eso, ¿no? Tenemos estos conflictos, como residentes tenemos conflictos que con los grupos, que entre personas, y creo que no se trata de eso, ¿no? Yo creo que ya todos somos adultos aquí y todos estamos aquí para trabajar juntos. Si yo no le caigo bien a ciertas personas, no importa, estamos aquí para trabajar juntos y eso es lo que estamos tratando de hacer en este momento, trabajar juntos y que también, si yo no estoy haciendo algo bien, que me lo dejen saber. Yo no entré nada más por el alcalde, yo tuve que meter una aplicación, esperar que me eligieron a mí y todavía tuve que esperar a que todo el consejo de la ciudad, que son no sé cuántos miembros, me escogieran. Si ellos no me hubieran escogido, yo no estuviera aquí. Así que yo no entré nada más por bonita o por preciosa o porque le caigo bien a alguien. Yo tuve que esperar y tuve que meter mi aplicación con el miedo de que no me fueran a agarrar porque sabía que habían grupos, habían organizaciones metiendo a personas de sus grupos y eso, y yo sabía que tal vez a mí no me iban a elegir. Estoy aquí y como lo dije en una de las reuniones, no me voy a ir a ningún lado. Estoy aquí por 3 vecindarios, no estoy aquí por mí ni por mis intereses propios. Estoy aquí porque he visto la necesidad que hay en estos 3 vecindarios. Y no solamente es una necesidad, son muchas las necesidades que tenemos como residentes. No estoy en contra ni a favor de nadie, estoy queriendo crear esta relación entre la comunidad y todas estas agencias que hay aquí, como National Western, Coliseo, todo eso, que están aquí, están haciendo mucho dinero, pero cómo ese dinero no está llegando a la comunidad. ¿Cómo se puede hacer eso para que la comunidad también se beneficie de ese dinero que está entrando en todos estos desarrollos, en todas estas arenas, en todos estos agencias que hay? Entonces, no voy a ir a ningún lado, ya estoy aquí y los que me conocen saben cómo soy. Yo no me voy a quedar callada, siempre voy a estar a favor de la comunidad.
Okay.
Así que aquí estoy y no me voy y ya es muy tarde y sí estoy de acuerdo que tenemos que hablar y todo eso, pero creo que también tenemos que respetar el tiempo de las personas cuando están hablando. Yo les estoy dando su tiempo, les estoy respetando su tiempo y bueno, eso es todo lo que tengo que decir. Gracias.
¿Puedo hablar?
Great, thank you, Sandra. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 minute. I'm not sure who that is, but I will do one thing quickly. Roberta, I'm going to recognize you in a minute. I did want.
Soy Angelina.
Where? Angelina. Hold on just one moment, Angelina. Okay. I do want to recognize one suggestion in the chat, and I don't know, Angela Garcia, if you want to comment at all. You said something about working groups. I don't know if people saw that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then I will go to Angelina, and then I will go to Roberta. Go ahead,
Hi,
Angela.
everyone. Good evening. I know it's hard, it's cold, we're hungry, we're hangry. But what I wanted to say about the work groups is maybe there could be a work group to work with the NWC and the GES Coalition to address the questions, a different work group to talk about all the other things that we've talked about in the past hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And then what would happen in those work groups when we meet again on this time next month, whoever the lead for that work group would be would come forward and say, this is what we talked about, this is what we were able to get to. And you know, the meetings obviously I think need to be 2 hours long because an hour and a half is just not enough time. And then the other thing, Liz, I think what might be able to help is to have just like a brief newsletter or bullet points to send out to this group of people to talk about the various things that you guys want to talk about, like those small things maybe. And that would better, or maybe do, you know, the advisory group for the Vasquez Boulevard I-70 just had a Superfund 101, and that helped a lot. Maybe that's something we need to do, is have an NWC /NWA 101 to explain to us what it is that is what is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
That may help us go down the road a little bit better or not. Thank you. I hope it makes sense.
That did. Thank you, Angela. So Angelina, did you have one thing, and then we'll take Roberta, and then I think we're gonna finish up for the evening.
Sí, yo creo que nosotros tenemos una visión y una misión para hacer cambios en nuestros vecindarios. Nosotros queremos tener una vida mejor
porque la verdad es vivir en Swansea es amar a Dios, porque todos los desarrolladores que han llegado siempre han agarrado buen dinero que el alcalde les ha dado. Ellos nada más ponen una porción y hacen grandes proyectos. Entonces, pues nosotros seguimos luchando para el bienestar de nuestras comunidades. Y yo creo que no debemos tener divisiones ni de un lado ni del otro. Gracias.
Thank you, Angelina. And Roberta?
Okay, this is a quick one, guys. I was
Okay.
just thinking maybe a billboard like they have at schools that could tell when we're having a meeting, and that all the community that's in Swansea, Colville, and Elyria could see. And in the meantime, till we can get that board, if Master Western would put it up on their little thing when we're going to have a meeting, and then everybody will have access to knowing when meetings will be. And then they could choose whether to come or not. But you got to know everybody's not going to want to come to meetings all the time.
Yep. I couldn't agree more, Roberta. Thank you for that. So, and this is going to be hard with this large group, and I'm going to propose something, and then if you guys don't want to try it, then you can raise hands and make a quick comment. There's a lot for this group to do and talk about, but I think that we need to have a little bit, maybe some smaller groups working on things, as Angela suggested. I like that idea just because I think that people who have specific interests in things can be very involved in talking about a topic like phases 3 through 8. You know, who are the people that are interested there in that, and can that smaller group get together using our Zoom, facilitated however you want to do that? Is there a group of people that is interested in, you know, kind of putting together information about the current phases and getting updates about what's happening on the campus, what's happening with workforce, those sorts of things? Is there a group of people that really want to talk about this, the citizen members on the board, and come up with a proposal and then present it back to the broader community group? And then I think a number of people highlighted community outreach, and you know, Roberta, you just came up with a new idea, right? What is there a place that where everybody can go and look and know what the meetings are that are happening? Is that an electronic board? Is that something that people will know that they can get information there, but they also need to get it other places? Is setting up working groups that would come together and come up with ideas and recommendations to this broader group something that you guys think would work? Or I just feel like if we do another meeting like this, we're getting our opinions out for sure, but everybody has talked about wanting to take some action, and I'm trying to find a way for everybody to come together and begin to you know, come up with some plans that then this entire group can evaluate and discuss. Is that something? And
Let's try it. Yes, let's try it. Let's try it once, and if it works, we'll keep doing it that way.
Okay, Brad, you have a comment? Thank you for that, Roberta. Brad, do you want to?
Right. I've been keeping a few notes, and this is not a full list. I know I haven't captured everything here, but just some of the things that could be handled either in a working group or in, you know, that I think would still be open to folks, right? Anybody could come to anything. I want to be careful that we're also not, people don't feel like anyone is being excluded from anything. So at the end of the day, you really are talking about more meetings, but they would be more sort of maybe single topic, more focused meetings. But some of the things I have heard talked about is one, you know, a detailed review of the questions and answered from GES Coalition. That's a deeper dive that's needed to get to improve and complete those answers. We've talked about the Community Investment Fund process, and that's been a conversation that I think folks want to hear more about. 3, the board representation, that whole question around how are board members approved and selected, and what is their representation on the board. 4, the outreach approach. It is very helpful to us to hear these great ideas around other approaches to get to more folks in the community, that's really very helpful. And then 5, the overall process moving forward, like how, when we started this out, we really started with the question, how does the community define a good process, an effective process to sort of start to look at phases 3 through 8. So there's at least those buckets of topic that I've heard tonight, and I'm sure there's other ones as well that we could talk to. But we're up for as many meetings as are needed at a pace that is works for all of the community. Obviously, this is asking a lot of neighbors to take this kind of time, but I agree we need to be respectful of the time that we do use and have with you, because we so much appreciate it.
Great. AE, I'll call you on you in just one moment. So so maybe we can talk about or I'm happy to send out an email with the working group idea to see, who would like to be involved in what, and then we can make this meeting a monthly standing meeting for 2 hours, and then see if we can get the working group piece going. AE, I'll have you comment, and then I just might ask everybody if maybe to raise their hand if that's something that they think is good. But let's go with AE, and then we'll go to Alfonso.
Just to be real nuts and bolts here, the commitment and the mandate coming out of the end of December decision with the National Western Center Advisory Committee, when the long-term facilitator removed themselves, was to hold 3 minimum of 3 monthly meetings on pattern, which would put us in March. Liz, I honestly feel, and I'm baffled why the edges have gotten so fuzzy on this. And the goal was to provide a momentum of structured meetings to establish the openness more formally and answer all of the questions people are talking about now regarding how to move forward with a community inclusive function of a group having an impact. The facilitation support from the authority was provisional, and that discussion seems to disappear. And I don't have an opinion either way. I think the idea of having a meeting, what I would propose is that we stick to what the precedent is coming out of what is established in the framework agreement, which did not provide for a transition that I can find in the text if the CAC was phased out or remodeled, so to speak. But we should commit to the March. We should get that March meeting, so that folks know it's the last Thursday or the second to last. March is a big month, and perhaps have a full discussion of what the work groups would be. I also think that it's important that I agree with Brad Buchanan, who just emphasized that everyone should always be welcome to participate in every measure. There are protocols in place that can formally expand the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee. Those are in place. Pretty much everyone on this phone call has met the initial requirement of participating in 3 meetings, and then we can also formalize that and make a formal transition, change it, do whatever. But I think it's very bad, mentoring and very bad leadership to have fuzzy processes like this. And I'd like us to somehow discuss that among ourselves. I'm glad to see the emerging sort of broad-based broad-based engagement. And I think a tremendous amount can happen with outreach. One last thing I want to say is early on in the Globeville neighborhood planning process, there was conversation about wanting to put an LED events announcement and meeting announcement board in Argo Park. And unfortunately, it kind of got co-opted, and there was a little manual announcement board put. I think it's still there in Argo Park. It wasn't what we were thinking of, but I am absolutely absolutely down with having a generally accessible, neighborhood-centered board. That I think that, well, I'm not sure if that was you, Roberta, or whoever was that suggested that. Let's bring that forward. There's a lot of things in that can be solidified. So, but I would really ask and propose and request that we put the March meeting on the books, and take all the focus from this meeting into the general briefings, arenas, and the further specifics that people want to get involved in.
Great, thanks, AE. And Alfonso?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to echo a recommendation I think Nolo put in the chat. Can't remember who put it now. But just like as far as communicating these meetings, first of all, I think that responsibility, of course, as his neighbors and groups, like we try our best to do that. But ultimately that responsibility falls on the authority, falls on National Western, falls on the city. And I like the idea of like taking out an ad in the GES Gazette. Just because as far as I know, I mean, I saw advertisements in their last one from the National Western, if I'm not wrong, for the stock show. So just because it's already a medium that gets to every household, or should, I'll see in the chat that some people aren't getting it. I don't see why not take up the opportunity of something that's already in place that gets out there every month to consistently put out those sort of communications about community meetings that should be open for everyone, are open to everyone, but as some people have pointed out, not everybody gets that communication because logistically it's kind of hard for us to do so. As like, if the onus is on community members to do that, then we're never going to be able to do that job to, what should, to the level that's required.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Alfonso. I wrote that down as a suggestion. So as a way to sort of bring this to an end, we can have, and AE, I want to say one thing about the standard time. The CAC sort of ended up losing that standard time, and the Washington Street Citizens Advisory Group has ended up now in that standard time that CAC has always happened. And so that's why we bumped back
how
to
that happened,
Wednesday.
I think I understand, and how that happened, I think is something that should be transparent, but it's not a big issue. But and then by the way, there's an extra Thursday in March, so it may not be a problem. But that's part of the fuzziness. So,
yeah.
But let's just work around it for now, because that's the modus operandi.
Got it. Okay, so what I would like to do is put this meeting on the calendar for a Wednesday. We are in the last Wednesday, I believe, but to do this as a I'll have to look at the calendar, I apologize. To have this be the standard meeting time for this group, and have it go from 5 to 7. And I think what I would like to do, if there are people that are objecting to having this be a Wednesday night recurring meeting every month, if there's large dissent here, if I see my screen fill up with hands up, then we might have to go back to the drawing board. But if there are people that do not want so if you do not want to have the meeting on the Wednesday night, please put your hand up. Okay. I'm giving everybody time. That's the little circle with the smiley face on it at the bottom. Okay, so Liliana, Yadira. Okay.
Wednesdays are hard for me.
Okay.
That's the night that and Thursdays. It just depends on the week of the month, because I teach in the evening.
Got it.
I was able
Okay.
today.
Great. Thanks, Liliana. All right. So I do have to say, I don't think we're ever going to get everybody, but I think since I have only 4 hands up saying no, that we're going to go ahead and schedule this meeting on the Wednesday. And then the biggest question is whether you would like me to send, the goal here was to understand what you guys want to do and what you get done. And then we as staff will help get the message out and communicate and provide you with the information that you need to start a process where we're all working together at the same table. So there's been a suggestion of working groups, and I am happy to send out an email now about working groups, or maybe we just focus on, instead of talking about these other issues, maybe we focus on form and function of this group and whether it breaks into working groups at the next meeting, or I can suggest that list of working groups that Brad suggested. So
well, we could do all that, and we could talk about the topics for working groups at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That was some of what AE was suggesting.
Okay.
Liz, would it be worthwhile to ask the question about other nights of the week to see if there was a better, if Tuesdays work better, or? Well,
we had 4 folks. I mean, we could, yes. I mean, we could do if we want to do a hand raise, but I have worked with, I kind of get feedback from the different groups that are happening. This is one thing that we have a problem with, is that all of these meetings are not in one place, right? And so we don't know all of the other community meetings that are happening and what we're bumping up against. And so if we want to look at other nights, I'm happy to look at other nights, but I think Thursdays in this particular week are not going to work. If we want to go,
should we look at a different week of the month that, on a Thursday?
Yeah, we could do a third Thursday, but then I think we're going to, I think that.
I know nothing's going to be perfect, but I'm just trying to find as close to perfect as we can get.
Yep. I think that 4 people out of, 25 or 30 is maybe pretty close, but let me just. Oh yeah, and then Sandra has a third Thursday community meeting. And then, all right. So let's try this. And if it ends up that the attendance drops off, then we will readjust. But let's just go ahead with this. And what is really important to me is I want to get all of the people on this call onto the meeting invite and into the email list. And so I'm asking you, so you don't have to post your email address here in the chat, but if you will please email me. I put my email in the chat. And if it's okay, and let me ask this question, the next meeting will be a meeting talking about working groups and how this larger group begins to take action and form some recommendations for moving forward on a lot of those topics that we just talked about. We've talked about the topics, we've heard from people. There will always be room for people to talk about the things that they're concerned about. But there's some work to be done, and so we have to figure out how to get that work done. So let's have the topic. I'm going to say, if you guys are in favor of the next agenda being talking about the working groups and how that structure or another structure, if some other people have other structures to propose, let's have the next meeting be to talk about how this group gets structured to move forward and address a lot of these topics that you guys have brought up. It's the same themes we've heard in all of the meetings, so we're getting some consistency. So if you are in favor of doing that, please raise your hand using the little reactions button at the bottom. So this is yes, we want to meet on the next Wednesday and we want to talk about the working group. Thumbs up, hands up, whatever you want to do, or wave your hand. Okay. Excellent. Okay, people are coming on and waving. All right. Well,
Liz, can you remind
yes.
what is the date that we're
next date? Let me
about?
pull up my calendar here. Sorry about that. I will. So right now we're on the 21st. So it will be March. No, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong month. Apologies. Sorry. Today is the 23rd. So it would be the 23rd of March. So the 23rd of March. Okay. if that's okay, we'll move on with that plan, and we'll plan to see everybody on March 23rd. And we'll send out the information about the meeting. Any other final comments from folks? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. That was a lot of work and a lot of discussion, and appreciate everybody being here. All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
You bet.
Oh, there's one more question. What
Oh.
time? Same time? 5 to 7?
5 to 7. Yes, Liliana. Yep.